you've met before the introduction of the Torah. Our guest this morning, Rabbi Daniel Brenner, Vice President of Education Moving Traditions, an organization that has moving traditions means adjusting to the new world, readjusting our educational goals, the means, the methods, an organization that is reaching out throughout all of North America, and he's been speaking throughout the week, different parts of Miami-Dade, and bringing the ideas to us to try and enter the 21st century in terms of Jewish education. It's our pleasure to host Rabbi Brenner and to hear his words today.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. It is a total delight to be here in Miami. Let me just give you a little bit of my background. I grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina, and my mom's parents lived in North Miami. And for me, coming here as a child, it was paradise. They had orange trees and grapefruit trees in their backyard. They had a dog, they had a pool, they had a croquet set, and we had ice cream every day. And I also, as a child, was here during the height of the monkey jungle era. And this was a time where their motto was, the people are in cages, the monkeys are free. And this was back in the 70s, where they dressed the chimps in little outfits. There was like an astronaut chimp, and I just, everything about Miami. When my parents said we're gonna go visit my grandparents, I was jumping on my bed. I literally loved coming to Miami, and every time I come back and I see, I drive by Jackson's Ice Cream Parlor, and I'm just like, oh my God, this is my happy place. So coming to Miami to talk about well-being is so easy for me. It is just so wonderful to be in a place that I associate with my own personal well-being. And I want to just tell a little bit about my backstory, and this relates to my comments earlier. 13 years ago, before I started this job, before I started working and thinking about Jewish education and preteens and teenagers and parents of preteens and teenagers, before all of that, I was working for a very well-known Jewish organization, Birthright Israel, and I was very high up in the organization. I was working maybe 75 hours a week. I was traveling 3 or 4 times a week. I did not see my 3 children or my wife, but maybe 1 or 2 days a week. Like, I literally was like Moshe. I literally was just working to the point that my own well-being and my family's well-being was really suffering. And I volunteered for an event that Moving Traditions, the organization I work for now, was doing, and I thought to myself, I would be so much happier if I were working on something that was close to the concerns I have right now in my own life and my own family. My kids were getting ready for my identical twin sons were getting ready for their bar mitzvah, and I said to myself, I want to be present for that. And it really was a huge shift in my family when I went from a job, I took a cut in pay, but it was so worth it to change my life and to devote more of my time to my family and work that really is meaningful. So in the last 13 years, we have taken a very small organization that was concerned with mainly middle school and early high school kids and training educators who work with them. And we've grown it into a very important Jewish organization that trains hundreds of educators, day school educators, summer camp directors, youth group directors around the country. And I just have the great pleasure of going around and training and teaching and designing curriculum for them. And we're all doing this because 13 years ago, we first started to realize what we call now the crisis of connection that is happening for young people. Before COVID, before October 7th, the crisis of connection for young people was very apparent. Young people had hundreds of meaningless friends and were not finding one friend they could trust and be vulnerable with. It was astonishing. I saw it with my own eyes. We have identical twin sons, and then we have a daughter born 3 years later. So my sons, throughout middle school, they had what they call dumb phones, which was amazing. And they were incredibly happy every night because they weren't focused on their phones every night. When it came around to my daughter, that was the era when every bat mitzvah girl got an iPhone. And the smartphone just took over the teen world, and more, life started to seem transactional. I'm being judged every day by what I post. My social status is being measured by robots and an algorithm. This is a profound shift. And what we saw was something astonishing. Even though teenagers in the last 10 years are not consuming as much alcohol and ending up in car accidents and ending up in the hospital, more teenagers are ending up in the hospital because they are alone, because they are depressed, and because they are contemplating ending their own life. So this is a crisis of connection. And I am very fortunate that here, the Jewish Federation of Miami is part of a national initiative called the Be Well Initiative. This morning, Shoshana Farbman is with us as the director of the Be Well Initiative here in Miami, and is part of a network of Jewish leaders who are trying to address issues around mental health and well-being. And just, it's incredible. And I really commend the work that you're doing because it's highlighting an area where we need help. When you think about teens and well-being, you'd think that the poorest teens, the teens that are most economically disadvantaged, are the ones who are struggling the most. But it's the exact opposite. The teens whose parents have high expectations for them and who want them to succeed and want them to go to college, 89% of Jewish teens end up going to college, those are the teens who end up feeling the anxiety and experiencing the isolation. And it's those teens whose well-being we as Jewish educators and Jewish leaders really want to be concerned about. So I want to share with you a couple of the things that I have learned about well-being from my own return to being a healthier person, more focused on my own well-being, but also just things that I've learned that I think are really beneficial for teenagers. And the one I want to start with is something that I have only learned in the last decade as I've returned to studying dance. I used to always love to dance, like just at a party or any event, or even just like listening to the chazan, I'm like, yes, this chazan, by the way, is fantastic. But I'm like, yes, I'm feeling it through my body. So when I started to study dance again, I started to study 19th century, there's the chazan. I started to study 19th century shtetl dance. I love Fiddler on the Roof, and I love the dance movements. And so many of those movements I just felt were incredibly natural for my own body. And I started to read about dance history within Jewish life. And I discovered a professor at the University of Haifa named Tal Shafir. Tal Shafir is a neuroscientist who studies dance. And her first recognition that there were changes in the brain that come about through dance was when she was in Israel on the beach, and she saw a group of Holocaust survivors who were in their 70s and 80s doing Rikud Ha'am, doing Israeli dance. And she went over and she talked to them, and she asked them questions. When did you start dancing? And they said, as a teenager, this dance is what saved me. She said, what do you mean this dance is what saved me? They said, we were so depressed and absorbed so much trauma and destruction. But we would just get together and we'd dance for hours and hours and hours. The movement of our bodies, the movement in a group, being together, that is what gave us joy. That is how we survived. The dance saved us. And so Tal Shafir was thinking, yes, that's what you're saying, but did it really impact your body and your brain? And she started to think, I want to study how dance impacts the brain and builds what we call the resilience mechanism within the brain. And she started to study, and she came about with a finding, which is just remarkable, that there are 4 different kinds of movement that help build our resilience in our brain and help build our well-being. So I want to share those movements with you. If you want to do them with me, we can do them together. It'll just take literally 2 minutes, but I love to do movement and I love to do dance. So I want to share one kind of movement that is from 19th century shtetl dance. You just pull a handkerchief out of your pocket, okay? Everybody can pull a handkerchief out of your pocket. You can take it by both sides. And Tal Shafir says the first movement is light movement. So very lightly begin to pedal forward with your handkerchief. Very lightly. You can go very slow. And then pedal backward. Just feel the lightness moving through your body. If you want to move it to one side, and then let it float to the other side. Experiencing lightness and floating returns us to a sense of homeostasis and balance. One of my favorite ones is to do a figure 8. Just a very light movement. Another movement that she loves to teach about is there's something connected to joy that is about lifting and raising the hands. So just a simple raising the hands. In the shtetl style, you move your head from side to side, but it's just a beautiful, simple way of lifting and feeling joy. But it's not only joy, it's not only happiness that the body can replicate, it's also other emotions that are trapped in our body that dance can help us process. So one of the things in shtetl dance is dancing that is replicating suffering and replicating you in a situation of danger trying to save yourself. So you imagine you're pulling yourself out of a pit with a rope. So just try that, and it's a stretch and a pull. A stretch and a pull is part of your body processing pain and being able to power through pain. Another one that I really love is connected to what we do on Yom Kippur. If you clench your fists and just think about the thing that is stressing you out right now or the thing you're worried about right now, just clench it, and you can pound, if you want to pound your chest and just get the clenching, and then release it. And your body processes and you let go of it. So beautiful. And the last one that she talks about is just rhythmic movement. And my favorite rhythmic movement is what's called windshield wipers in shtetl dance, which is like da 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 da. It's just such a joyous, happy side to side. So one of the things that when you study Tal Shafir and when you see her, she has an amazing TED Talk, if anybody likes TED Talks, and she has great talks in Hebrew for the Hebrew speakers if you want to deep dive into her work. She's just incredible, University of Haifa. So one of the things that you learn from this method is that well-being and mental health doesn't start by thinking about it, but starts by feeling it in your body. Feeling well-being and mental health in your body, walking, being connected to others, saying hello to others. Those are the core elements of one's well-being. And Tal Shafir talks about how going from happiness to sadness and then back again to happiness, flowing through our emotions, is core to well-being. Well-being is not about happiness. So these are deep truths that really can help teenagers think about what it means to be well. And I want to share one beautiful Hasidic story that captures this truth. Here's the story. A young man is asking himself, what is the spiritual path? I see some people These Hasidim, they're running around, they're happy, they're throwing their arms in the air, they're always just laughing, and they're always partying, and they're drinking, and they're singing, and like, they're just happy all the time. They just like, this is like, the Nana Nachman, they're just always like ecstatic. Is that the spiritual path? Because then I see these other students, and they're so serious, and they're pious, and they have just an intensity in their learning, and they take the suffering of the world into their heart. And so this student goes and asks the Kotzker Rebbe, what is the path for a spiritual life? Is the path a path of happiness or a path of piety and seriousness? And the Kotzker Rebbe answers in the following way. There are two kinds of suffering, and there are two kinds of happiness. There's one kind of suffering which is immersing yourself in your own feelings of self-hatred and your own feelings that nothing is going to get better, and your own feelings that everyone is out to get you, nothing is going to go your way. You can spiral in your own thoughts if you go down that path, and it is very dangerous. But there's another path of the serious, pious, suffering path, which is to be open to the suffering of others and to see yourself as standing in empathy with others by being present to your own suffering, sadness, loss, and grief, and leading with your own loss and grief in your life. And there are two paths of happiness. There's one path of happiness which is all about living in the moment. But the problem is, once that strawberry's eaten, it's gone. Or once that moment is experienced, you're left wanting more and you're unhappy. But there's another deeper type of happiness. And that is the happiness that can only be described as a person whose home has burnt to the ground and they are building it back brick by brick. I love this story because it really captures a deep truth about well-being that is such a Jewish truth. That our lives as Jewish people, our lesson for humanity as Jewish people, is we build strength from resilience and our suffering, and we make time for joy. I was so happy just to celebrate like 5 birthdays this morning, okay? We make time for joy. Every human being, every life is an entire world. So balancing between the seriousness and the suffering and the joy and happiness, this is what a life of well-being is about. And our work in the Jewish community, with Jewish families, and with Jewish preteens and teens, is to say Judaism is a resource for your well-being. Judaism is, just even with this parsha, Judaism is rich with lessons about how to be in this world and how to thrive in this world. And we know the most important thing for young people is that they learn to navigate friendships and develop friendships and learn to negotiate with their parents and learn the give and take of that negotiation. So our focus as Jewish educators, and what we do is we train many Jewish educators to think, what are the core things that preteens and teens and young adults need, and how can Jewish teaching and Jewish life itself play a role in that? So thank you so much for having me here. It is such a pleasure to be part of the community. I will be here for the Kiddush, and I'm happy to talk to anybody about the work that we do. Again, thank you to the Federation of Miami and the Be Well Initiative, and thank you all for just such an incredible, warm welcome. Shabbat Shalom.